Slovakia Untold is a podcast brought to you by Slovakia Travel and Zulf Hayat Khan. Slovakia Untold is a brand new podcast brought to you by Zulf Hayat Khan and Slovakia Travel in a commitment to tell the stories of the people who make Slovakia an enriching and extraordinary place to live. In lieu of telling the story of the countryside and the Tatras and the beautiful scenery, I've decided to choose the people who have lived and moved to Slovakia to make it their home. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Donal. Donal, can you tell me, first of all, where you're from, how long you've lived in Slovakia, and what you do?
Thanks, Ulf. It's great to be here, and thanks for the invitation. I'm happy always to do anything I can do to promote Slovakia as a destination, both for business and pleasure. So I'm from Ireland, a small town called Dundalk, halfway between Dublin and Belfast, and I've been here for 13 years now. So 2011 was when I came. I've done a few different things since I came here. So I started off on the classic path of teaching English.
Yeah.
Got involved in the biometrics industry in around 2015.
Wow.
Founded my own company 4 years ago in the same space, and then recently sold that company to a Canadian company. So now I split my time across Slovakia, Canada, and a bit of the UK.
So a real multinational traveler, success story, and someone who's been here 13 years. Now, you mentioned Dundalk. It's you'd have to really know about Dundalk to know about where it is. Did you, in your wildest imagination, think as a child, I'm going to end up in Slovakia? And how did you get here in the first place?
No, if you told me when I was 20, which was a year before I came to Slovakia, that I'd end up living here, I would have told you were crazy. I was planning to probably stay in Dundalk or maybe go as far as Dublin, which is about 90 kilometers away. I ended up coming here because I suppose life circumstances. My firstborn, who is now 14, Ben, his mom is Slovak. We met in Ireland. He was born there. And, one thing after another, we didn't stay together and she moved back to Slovakia. So after a period of kind of flying back and forward, by the way, a good thing to mention is the Dublin to Bratislava flight link.
Yeah.
It's a lifesaver and really, really reliable.
And one you use regularly?
Weekly at this point, so I ended up coming here 2011, I think it was August. And settled initially in Trnava, of all places. Been in Bratislava since 2014, basically,
So that's a hell of a commitment. And obviously, as you'll find during the process of doing these podcasts, quite a lot of people come to Slovakia because they have a Slovak wife. I'm the same. I have a Slovak wife. Would I have come if I hadn't had a Slovak wife? Probably not. But, you could argue that Slovakia's best export are perhaps the women that bring the foreigners here. But it's the foreigners that come here and do business like you have done, and you've made it your home. You've learned the language, which you're one up on me there. You managed to create a business, you sold a business, and you had lots of handcuffs all the way through, people doubting you and all of that stuff. What do you think were the biggest challenges when you first came here? Was it a mindset thing or was it language thing? What were some of the biggest issues?
Yeah, well, Slovakia 2011 is very different than Slovakia 2024.
Sure.
Like unrecognizable in many ways. So me coming from Ireland, and you're quite familiar with Irish culture, we're very, very open, very friendly, very jovial. And at least on the surface, when you arrive in Slovakia in 2011, that's not what you're met with. So kind of understanding the cultural nuances, understanding how to connect with people. The level of English back then was not what it is today. In fact, today I think it's really good. A lot of people speak English. If a tourist comes here, they'll usually be fine speaking just English. So learning the language was something which was necessary at that time, which is not maybe the same case today. And then I suppose just finding my feet, understanding how things work, getting a bit of work and have some income was, the first 6 months of settling in anywhere is always a challenge. But I wouldn't say there was anything that really put me off the country initially. Just some adjustments that took some time to make.
Interesting that you say that there were the language thing was an issue, more the English speaking and less of the Slovak speaking. What first struck you? I mean, Ireland we know it as the Emerald Isle. It's one of the most beautiful countries in Europe, if not maybe even in the wider global context. When you first came to Slovakia, you mentioned Trnava. I was there a couple of weeks ago cycling. It's a stunning place. Were you awestruck with how beautiful the country and the landscape was, or was it just like a baby island for you?
No, I was. People in Western Europe kind of unintentionally ignorant, I suppose, to countries like Slovakia. They see it as sort of somewhere over there in Eastern Europe, even though it's actually Central Europe, and they're very particular about that.
Yeah,
You would never associate it with what the reality is. So that's, beautiful nature, lakes, world-class hiking, world-class skiing. And actually, one of the really nice things is that you don't even have to go far outside Bratislava to access
Sure.
that. I think that I live in downtown Bratislava, and within 10 minutes, I can be at the lake at Chunovo, I can be up at Kamzik, I could be in the middle of a forest. It's really well located, even around the Slovakia area for those kind of things. And then if you do have more time and you go to, Banska Štiavnica, Banska Bystrica, the Vysoké Tatry.
Yeah, it's a holiday in a country.
It's a holiday in a country, absolutely.
One of the things that also struck me about being here is, we're not from a big hiking family. We're not big countryside. My children are very active in other sports, so we don't tend to do those things together. Do you think that you would like to see a different approach to how Slovakia was promoted globally? I mean, let's be honest. Both you and I, we come from the UK and Ireland. Our travel destinations tend to be Spain, France. The regulars, the big hitters. America. Dubai now is very popular. How would you have sold Slovakia as a travel destination back then when you first came and thought people should really find out about? I call it a hidden gem.
Yeah.
What do you think could have been done to make the story of Slovakia seem a little bit more palatable?
Yeah, I think the image of Slovakia back then, going back 10 plus years ago, would have been as a relatively inexpensive destination for a guy's weekend trip or a stag party or those kind of things. And I think that's really, really far from the truth, right? I would have sold it to people who, for example, would pay 5 times what they would pay in Slovakia to go skiing in France and actually get better
value for money
slopes, right?
Yeah.
And I think in recent years, I've seen a lot of effort put into marketing Slovakia as a destination. I think that's good to see.
Yeah.
I think that needs to continue. I do think there are things that, Slovakia could do to help itself in that equation. So I always use the comparison of Austria, right? We love going at weekends, paddleboarding on the lakes.
Yeah.
You go to Austria, Neusiedlersee, you drive there, you've got parking, you've got buffet on the lake, you've got all that kind of stuff you need. Then you go to some incredible lakes, like way better lakes in Slovakia, like Chunovo as an example, but you don't have even parking there. You're getting parking tickets or clamps in your car for parking on the roads beside it. A little bit of investment into the infrastructure could really help with the marketing efforts of the country.
You've hit the nail on the head there, and that's an opinion I share. Moving all the way back to culture now. I mean, what's your opinion about the food? I know we've done a 180 here.
Yeah.
Slovak food for some is a tough sell. Was that something that you were shocked about when you first arrived? Everyone's got an opinion about Slovak food.
Yeah, anyone who ever comes to visit me, and a lot of people have visited over the years, I always tell them, brinzowe halušky is the national dish of Slovakia, and it's very much like Marmite in the British context. So you either love it or you hate it. Probably more people love it than hate it of the people that I've had try it. I have an addiction as well, of fried cheese.
Oh yeah,
which is something that when I explain what it is to Irish people, they can't get their head around. It's cheese with batter and fried.
Yeah, but what's not to like about that?
It's a heart attack on a plate, but it's really, really tasty with the tartar sauce and all that. So I think like the traditional Slovak food, if you go a little bit up the level, the things like the goose, they have these goose weekends in the villages around Bratislava. Yeah. That's really
Slovenský grob.
Slovenský grob and all those places, Chorvatský grob. That's really good food. Like that is for me like fine Slovak cuisine. And aside from the Slovak cuisine, like the selection and quality of restaurants around the city over the last even 5 or 6 years has really gone up, and you can find pretty much anything you want around Bratislava these days.
It's clear from speaking to Donald that you've been here a while, and Slovakia's got under your fingernails. It's understandable. You're married to a Slovak lady. You've got a half Slovak child. It's hard not for it to be now a part of you.
It is.
Sad news now is that you're leaving to the UK. In terms of language, you learnt the language, Donald.
Yeah.
I've been here nearly 8 years and I haven't managed to learn the language. How hard was that?
I don't want to downplay this, but for me it wasn't extremely difficult, and the reason is that I didn't go to like any.
Sorry, Mum.
to any classes or official lessons. I just tried to sort of embed myself in places where I could learn it sort of passively. So maybe slightly before your time, but the old Goblins pub on Dunajska was a great place where they used to have language meetups. So you'd go there, twice a week and meet people and speak Slovak.
That's so cool.
Yeah, played a bit of football, for example. And instead of joining initially the international team here, I joined the local team and played with the local guys. And of course, you probably learned the bad words first, but it's a good way to Nadauki. It's a good way to do that. And then, of course, the funny thing is with my wife, Dominika, we speak Slovak together. We text in English and we talk in Slovak.
It's a completely bilingual life,
which is just a weird scenario we've got ourselves into. And our little guy Ryan, he's just gone 2. He switches, without any effort between both languages. The really good thing about knowing Slovak, apart from getting around okay in Slovakia, is if I'm ever home in Ireland or in London, you might be having a beer after work or something, and you're talking to a group and you realize they're from Slovakia and you start speaking Slovak to them. That's a really good skill to have.
And even now, I mean, I don't speak Slovak. My kids are also bilingual, and the lingua franca at home fluctuates between the two as well. When I'm in London and I hear someone speaking Slovak, I immediately go and say hi, and you feel like you're part of the family now. You feel like you're part of the fabric. It's a strange thing. What is your favorite phrase in Slovak?
Všetko v poriadku.
Okay, všetko v poriadku. Everything's okay. Let's ask the cameraman. Všetko v poriadku? We got a thumbs up there. What about socializing? Now, you mentioned football, and that's a really cool thing. Community is everything to an expat, right? How you embed yourself. I played football all my life in Dubai. I played for the Dubai Football Club in the Amateur Football League, and that was everything. People from all around the world. But it's a good way to integrate to the community. In terms of lifestyle, nightlife, restaurants, clubs, was that something that you found was good, interesting, or was it something that maybe you were a little bit too old for that now? Or
well, I am now.
There's still lead in the pencil then.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, I would have, of course, in the early days when I came here and was at certain periods young, free, and single. I would have, of course, gone out more often than I do now. Now I'm more like my socializing is watching a match in a bar and having a beer or two afterwards. I don't think I've been in a nightclub in 6-7 years probably.
Oh, and you're so much younger than me as well. This is embarrassing.
But just going back onto the football thing. So, and this might be interesting for people who are considering moving to Slovakia or understanding what expat life is like. With a couple of friends, it is going back 10 plus years. We were involved in a club called the Dragons, which is in Bratislava. And at one point I was managing them. This is probably going back 6 years. We had 7 players from 17 different countries.
That's extraordinary.
Involved in the team. And we play in the official football pyramid, in the sixth tier of the football pyramid. And if you come to Slovakia and you're, half decent at football, you train twice a week, you get to go to all the little villages around Bratislava at the weekends and play football. And it's a perfect way to just get straight into the culture and understand how things work in Slovakia and make yourself feel more of an insider than an outsider.
Donald, you have such a rich experience in Slovakia. I know that you're a little bit under the weather, so thank you very much for joining me today on Slovakia Untold. But before I let you go, I want you to give me one funny Slovakia anecdote. Something that...
Okay, so there is one, and it's a stupid one, but I think it's funny. It's about learning the language and how some words sound similar to other words, but have very different meanings. And obviously, as someone who's, on social media and all of that, having my phone is very important to me and charged at all times. This is about 2012. I was just getting my early proficiency in the language, and I learned that the word for a phone charger was nabiačka, right?
Yeah.
So
that's my daughter's favorite word.
Yeah. So I was out with some friends one evening socializing, and I went to the barmaid and I said, "Excuse me, you wouldn't in Slovak. You wouldn't have
say it in Slovak.
Nemáte prosím vás zabijačku." Of course, zabijačka is a mass killing of pigs. So.
Oh, that's brilliant. You didn't by any chance slaughter some pigs?
No, I haven't done that yet. Yeah. I have slaughtered a goat in Uganda, but that's a story for a different day.
Donald Green from Ireland, 13 years sentenced to Slovak life. Thank you very much for being my first guest on Slovakia Untold.
Thank you, Zolf.
I'm now joined by Andrew Dixon. Andrew, can you tell me where you're from and how long you've lived in Slovakia?
Yeah, it's been a journey to get here, but I think it's been worth it. I'm originally from Southwest England, born in Exeter and Devon. Moved around a lot in the UK. Studied in France, lived in Germany, 10 years in Prague to get to this, my possibly final, possibly not destination. Bratislava, where I've been for 5 years.
So that's 5 years. So we got there. It's quite an extensive amount of travel. 10 years in Prague. You're married to a Slovak lady.
Yes.
And our children, they go to school together. Did you ever imagine in your wildest imagination growing up in southwest England that you would end up in Slovakia? You told your parents, they think, Andrew, you're going to end up in Slovakia?
No. Absolutely no clue. Probably Provence, south of France, I could have imagined. But no. Bratislava, Slovakia, no.
So 10 years in Prague, so you understand Czech and you speak Czech, and so that was a good foundation for the Slovak language. This is now a place where you call home. What would you find were the biggest challenges adjusting to Slovakia when you first moved? I mean, you'd had the tee up in Central Europe. You'd done your due diligence regionally, but what were the biggest adjustment elements for you when you first arrived?
I think that the culture shock took place in Prague when I moved from Germany to Prague. Neighboring countries, completely different cultures. I think after 10 years in Prague, moving down to Bratislava, it's a different. I think it's probably a different. It's a different sort of tempo. I think a little bit. I think it's a much better location. The reason I actually moved to Bratislava is because of my role in Vienna.
Yeah.
So I had a job offer actually to cover both Bratislava and Vienna for my employer, and we took the decision to live on this side of the border rather than Austria. I think how does Slovakia differ to Prague? I think it's more of a. I think a lot of people say Prague is a big village. Yeah. I think probably Bratislava is a sort of middle-sized village, but I like the size of it. It's a very manageable size. It's a great location for me. I travel to Vienna when I needed to go to the office about 3 times a week, and that's very, very doable. I'm always happy to cross back into the border to come home.
So you did your due diligence, like I mentioned earlier, you did your time in Prague and stuff. But what was the first, and obviously you would have fluctuated and traveled because Central European, now I've understood how everything is so well connected. I'm in Budapest, Poland, I'm Czech Republic. Every week I'm traveling around. So that was one of the things that struck me first, is that this connectivity,
yep.
Centrality, it's a hub. And I never knew that. And it's extraordinary when you can go speak to people in London. They're like, really? You were in Budapest last week? Yep. Oh, yeah. And then I was in Prague the week before. So there was nothing that necessarily surprised you about Slovakia because you're married to a Slovak lady and you traveled between Prague and Bratislava before. But what really struck you first about the country? That's that when you go back to southwest England and say, this is the thing that really tickled my fancy, or this is the thing that struck me about Slovakia that you thought was a game changer or something of interest.
Yeah, I think when I go home, and you obviously have to explain where Slovakia is and sort of what it is as a country. I think it's a small country. It's an amazing location.
I think they prefer the word compact.
Compact, small,
yeah.
Big, small country. I think they call it a small, big country. Yeah. I think it really is a gateway, as you say, to Central and to Europe and to Eastern Europe. Also looking west and south to the Balkans.
And what did your family say when they visited? What do they think?
I think they enjoyed it. My wedding back in 2009. We're in the days of Sky Europe, so we almost chartered an entire aircraft to come to Košice.
You've got that many friends?
A few empty seats, but my guests, there were about 40 guests, and they really did experience a full traditional Eastern Slovakian wedding.
Both our wives are called Eva, and both of them from Košice.
Both of them more or less from Košice. Exactly.
Not the same lady. It's not that kind of country.
But I think they enjoy it. It's a type of place that but most of them had only been or had never been to before, I would say. And I think also with Slovakia there is a difference. I think my experience of Slovakia before moving here was from Eastern Slovakia. Yeah. Eastern Slovakia is different to Western Slovakia, in particular Bratislava. How it looks, the accents, the traditions, the standard of living as well. I think also the infrastructure. So I've probably been prepped by my time in Eastern Slovakia before moving to Bratislava. So it was probably a slightly lesser jump from Prague to Eastern Slovakia and into Western.
Putting on your big thinking cap here for a minute, and the idea of how you would like to see Slovakia talked about in international circles. We had Donal on earlier now, and he speaks Slovak. You also speak Slovak, and I'll come to that in a minute. But if you had the idea of that when you're traveling to the US or Australia or huge markets where there's massive potential for tourism and massive potential for people to come, normally they come on this 3 or 4 city circuit. What would you think is a nice hook? What would you think is the selling point of the country that you think, or maybe you have an idea that would enhance that visibility?
I think it's all around discovery. So I think Slovakia is undiscovered by not just the mass tourism market, but actually also sort of boutique tourists. I think there's a huge amount to discover. I know that the boats generally come through and stop at Bratislava for half a day before continuing on to Budapest. But I think if you take more time, if you go then east up towards Žilina, out towards Trnava, there's a huge amount which is undiscovered. And I think
so. A hidden gem. I like to call it a hidden gem.
It's a hidden gem, but I think it's that spirit of, you have a lot of travelers that want to discover, get under the skin, I think, as well, and that's
discover Slovakia.
Discover Slovakia. I think it's undiscovered. I think it's undiscovered. And I think that speaks to quite a large part of the tourist market.
So we've done the nice part. What's your opinion of Slovak food? I mean, give me the honest appraisal. Well, there are fans and there are people like me that sit on the fence, or less than that.
I think it's. I find it's quite basic, really. I think it tends to be
hearty,
you could say. So a lot of potato usage, a lot of flour, quite what we would say maybe a slightly stodgy food as well. But I also like the influences from Hungary, from Austria. I like the soups.
Yeah, because you see, the minute British people complain about food, we get a torrent of abuse saying how bad English food is in return.
Yeah, a lot less sandwiches, I think, than that. And I actually think it is probably a healthier diet, that you have the soup, you have a decent main meal, and very few desserts. You can go home and have that.
One thing that people don't talk about, and the food is obviously always something that is centralized to culture and civilization. It's a focal point, is the hospitality of people. I've noticed here, and since my time in Slovakia, that it takes a while for people to warm up, but generally hospitality here, people are so friendly, welcome you into their homes. Was that something that was unusual to you? I mean, I can't imagine if I was going to see my neighbor in London, or you maybe in the southwest of England, that have that kind of community spirit that maybe people do welcome you into their homes. Did you find that?
I did certainly. I mean, as I say, my first sort of touch points into Slovakia were in particular in eastern Slovakia.
Well, they're more friendly. I mean, I think let's be honest.
Yeah, a little bit than in the West, but yeah, I think so. I think there's a more sort of tradition of sharing, inviting you into your house and offering you something to eat, something to drink, some traditional. I think probably I'd like to see, and I think there's a lot to be said for Slovaks being a little bit more proud of what they have as a country, a little bit more sort of almost like not house proud but country proud as well. I'd like to see the Slovaks look after what they have a lot, because there are a lot of run down areas, buildings.
So you see that there's opportunity to improve infrastructure. Road between Košice and Bratislava needs to finally happen,
for example.
I think people, we don't have to be Slovak to know that.
Yeah, I think a lick of paint here or there, cutting a hedge, it makes a huge difference. And when you go into Austria, the villages and the streets are just looked after, and you can just see that the inhabitants there all together want to have a nice street. They want it to look good, and I think that's maybe something which the Slovaks could also do.
Okay, so
I think
so we have an idea of how we would like to see things improve, and it's always easier from the outside because we're foreigners and we can lay the blame at someone else's door. And talking of laying the blame at someone else's door, I mean, as a foreigner, do you have an opinion about the political landscape in Slovakia? Or I always like to say there's 5 million politicians here. Is that something that you've taken an interest in, or is it something that you like to park when you get home?
No, I have taken an interest in it. I think particularly since the election, or the two elections, the presidential and the parliamentary election, over the past year. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about what I see. I think it's many of the Many of the moves that have happened are quite go against the European values, and I think it's something that should be highlighted. That's my opinion.
Okay, just a couple more questions, and this on more the light-hearted side of things. What's the phrase you enjoy saying the most in Slovak?
Nevadí.
Nevadí. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Anything that we said here comes with immunity. Nevadí, pohodě, všetko poriadku we had before. And your funniest Slovak anecdote. Everybody's got a story here. Wives have to take.
I think it's the language faux pas, and I was in a perfume store very early on, and I don't think my Slovak was perfect at the time. They were the false friends, and the lady came up to me and said, "Can I help you?" And I was trying the testers and spraying, and I said, "No, I'm okay. I just smell instead of I'm just smelling."
So how do you say that in Slovak?
No, jako iba smrdím, not iba voním, iba voním. So
I've got to say thank you very much, Andrew Dixon, UK citizen, Slovak resident, and 5 years in Slovakia, but 10 in Prague before. So a Central European stalwart. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Ulf.
It's always the stories, Chris, of people who moved to Slovakia that interest me. And I will let you introduce yourself. Tell me where you're from. Tell me how long you've been here, and tell me what you do.
Sure. My name's Chris Sanders, and been here. First time I came to Slovakia was 1992 with my sister, and my mother was born here. Grandparents also from here. They live with us in the U.S., so not a lot of culture shock getting here. Moved here, I guess, long-term, open offices here in 2018, and survived COVID in Slovakia, which was fun.
Wow.
And and our company, we do management consulting, government contracting, logistics, pretty much a little variety of things. And Slovakia is a good geographic location for us for what we do.
It's amazing, the story. 1992 was your first foray. I was 15 then. So for those who are good at maths, you can work out exactly how old I am. Probably the greatest voice of any person in Slovakia. This is going to make for great podcast stuff. So obviously you have a family link to Slovakia. Your mom was born here. But strategically, Slovakia is a hotbed of interest because of its connectivity. It's so close to Ukraine. It's so close to Austria, Hungary, Czech Republic, Poland. It borders 5 countries, and a lot of people forget that actually. So strategically, Slovakia is an exceptionally acute or interesting location for a business to start up. Culture shock for you wasn't there because 1992 was the first time you came, so Slovakia was a very, very different place then.
That is true.
But you spent a large chunk of your adult life and professional life living in the US and working in the US. When you decided to set up your organization here pre-COVID, what was the biggest culture shock business-wise that you saw?
So, it's funny, and I don't know if it's just Slovak-centric or European-centric or outside the US-centric, but in the US, we have a really, I would say, probably a bad reputation work-life balance. We have none.
Yeah.
We work on the weekends, at night, and things like that. And I remember specifically some of our Slovak employees where we had a very important project, and I said, "Okay, I'll see everybody here on Saturday." And everybody just looked at me like I was insane.
Are you nuts?
So, I think that Slovakia is also like a hidden gem for business owners because I think the young talent here is very well educated. I think the school systems here prepare young Slovaks to be quite intelligent. And I think their language skills are pretty good. We have, in our office alone, I think we have a capability of like 18 languages. And
wow.
And it's really good. It's really helped us grow our business, and it's good. I think that it's a little hidden secret for a lot of people because you brought it up earlier, the geography, but I also think that it's also like a quality of life issue too. So for me, coming from America, from Washington D.C., lived in some big cities, Bratislava's like a breath of fresh air. Let's put it that way. You don't have a lot of the stressors that you have in America. You have American traffic here now.
Yeah, I hear that, and I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things that you mentioned, I mean, Washington D.C. compared to Bratislava is it's diametrically opposite. It's the center of the political landscape of the United States. It's a city that is associated with the decision making for the world. That's definitely not the case here in Bratislava. So when you first came and set up your company, what were the issues that you could? I mean, because business wise, it's also not that easy. I mean, I know you came to my other company,
Right.
and we had some discussions, but it's not the easiest of places to transition in seamlessly, is it? Did you find some bureaucracy issues?
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say that, and I've just had a conversation with some folks about this. As international business owners, when you do business in other environments, whether it's in the US or Dubai or other places, where everything is highly automated, a lot of things can be done online and
Hmm.
easily. Our experience here in Slovakia initially was not the best.
Yeah, sure.
Right, but you learn. I mean, we're visitors here. We get it. We're not expecting them to change to us, but do I think that some increased levels of automation and processes and customer service would do the country very well to attract foreign investment? I do.
I'm really glad you said that. You're actually the first person that's brought that up. The processing and the automation, the online systems leave a lot to be desired. Even me here and having to go through the foreign police. Actually, everybody I've engaged with at a bureaucratic level has been very friendly and polite.
Agree.
But the system is less than friendly and polite, and it's quite complicated, laborious. There's nothing worse than taking my wife to every office to try and get her to interlocute, and then sometimes she's not allowed in the same place because it's a security issue. For me, yes, it's my fault. I haven't learned Slovak, but it is complicated, and it's maybe not in line with other European cities where things can be done quite easily online. All of those things. So I take that on board. The idea of automation and process-driven improvements in getting the bureaucracy done. On to lighter topics, culture-wise. I mean, obviously, you have where are your family originally from in Slovakia?
Bratislava and Trnava.
So Trnava, that seems to be a link. Do you travel domestically and regionally?
I do.
Yeah.
I go all over the place every chance I get to still see some relatives that live up in Trnava, some in Nitra, and here locally, and try to get out as much as I can.
And if you could tell your friends back home in Washington D.C. and you say, obviously, mom's from Slovakia, but I never thought I'd relocate my business there or move my business there. What are the things that surprise them? And let's be honest, have any of them heard of Slovakia in the United States?
So my favorite is when I tell people, they're like, "Where is your office?" And I go, "Oh, it's in Slovakia." And they go, "Oh, Slovenia."
Yeah.
And I go, "Well, no, not exactly. A little north of there." But I really think that Slovakia, in general, if the word gets out a little more, I think that it would really educate the world about what are some of the really good things here. And I'm not just I don't have some internal family bias to the place, but I will say that it is a beautiful country.
Yeah.
And coming from America, being born in America, a country with a very short history, when you're able to drive down a road in Slovakia and look up and see a castle that's like 800 years old, Americans like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But American tourists will not come to some place that they don't know. And
9 out of 10 Americans wouldn't be able to point Slovakia out on a map.
well, I'd probably say that is accurate.
Yeah.
That is accurate. And when I tell them, hey, we're the two closest capitals, Vienna and Bratislava, I try to give them a little education about the place. And then when they Google it and they're like, wow, that looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Because I think Slovakia really, there is some room for improvement in marketing of Slovakia as, attracting foreign visitors as well as
Okay. So
quality of life.
let's put that into perspective. You're the hat, and you have the option to go and help Slovakia market itself globally. And the wonderful thing about America is that everything's an opportunity to make money, and that's what I love is entrepreneurial spirit. But if you were to take the idea to sell Slovakia to the world, how would you like to market it? What do you think would be effective? Especially, let's use the US market as an example here. I want to sell Slovakia to the US as a huge tourist destination. What would you like to see do? How would you like to see them bang the Slovak drum?
So one thing that I brought this up at several parties here in Slovakia, and
In polite company.
yeah, it's a very polite conversation. But I think the American market has two very strong, high income potential for Slovakia. Two strong markets. One is America has about 70 million self-identified strong Christians, right?
Yeah.
Slovakia, I would classify it as a Christian country with a lot of churches, a lot of history, and also whatever political leanings people have. As you know, in America, we have a lot of problems,
Yeah.
currently. And it's also seems like to be a very family values, traditional, conservative environment. And that section of the population in America is
Wow.
probably 50%. And it could be very attractive to do a lot of these religious trips to religious groups that come here. Because one thing American tourists do,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter where they go,
Mm-hmm.
they spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
And when I talk to shop owners here in Old Town, when I see a couple tourist buses from places that are not Americans, because
Mm-hmm.
I rarely see Americans other than getting off the riverboats sometimes,
Sure.
the Americans off the riverboats, the shopkeepers tell me, they spend more money in 10 minutes than a busload of some other people, just walking around Old Town all day. So,
Wow, that's you've brought something to my mind it's a target market that has never been mentioned to me before, and you're right. There's so many beautiful churches, historical churches, and there's so much of that religious history that permeates through the country.
correct.
And it's not just Bratislava, obviously, it's all through the country, and organizing religious tourism is actually a missed opportunity.
I agree.
And that would help improve the tourism industry if the volume was to increase overnight. The quality of service would have to increase overnight as well. The room keys,
Agree.
more hotels, more restaurants. It's better, right?
Because when it rains, all ships rise, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a really interesting point. Oh wow, I'm glad you raised that. Now on to things that I've asked all the other guys. Are you a fan of Slovak food? Yes or no?
Oh, well, as you can tell, I
Oh,
was raised on Slovak food. My grandmother cooked every day. I don't think I was allowed to go to McDonald's. Well, at least I wouldn't tell her I went to McDonald's because, of course,
so your babka cooked for you.
Oh yeah, she was the pro, and my mom, she took some lessons, so that contributes to our healthy stature of our family. We ate a lot of halushki, a lot of knedle, a lot of svíčková. You name it, we ate it.
And on the note of Slovak food, I mean, everybody has an opinion. My favorite thing is lokša. Everyone knows that. I don't know if the origin is Slovak. Some people say it's Hungarian. Whatever it is, it's a potato pancake that was crafted by the gods.
Love them.
I could probably eat that all day, every day. I unfortunately have to look after the moneymaker. So, I'm always on
Understand.
camera. What do you think in terms of future business-wise? We talk a lot about culture and stuff, and I think that Slovakia and Bratislava can be a hub for large organizations, corporations. Of course, we see the ones, the IBMs and so forth, they're already here. But to attract larger foreign investment, how would you like to see things be approached?
So I think that Slovakia, by geography, has
An advantage.
An advantage logistically. Right? So I'm a part of our business in logistics, and we couldn't pick a better location, I think. And I think goes back to one of our earlier points is the ease of entry into the Slovak market. Once you make it easier for international people, and there's some level of support, because one thing I think that's a missed opportunity, at least in my experience here, is in the beginning it was good, as you said, very helpful once you get to the right people, but then the sustainment, right? Nobody's really following up and checking on the company, right?
Yeah.
And saying, hey, how are you guys doing? I see you're growing. What can we do to make you grow more? How can the Slovak government help your company grow more, employ more Slovaks, pay more taxes, really grow your business? So I think there's a little missed opportunity there. And because I think the infrastructure here is good. I think the quality of housing and quality of education here is good for people with families that are moving here. And Slovakia has a lot of these X factors that I think are just not publicized. And maybe it's a good way. Maybe it's a part of a measured growth plan. I don't know. I'm not privy to that. But I think there's definitely some improvement even to existing companies that are here that could attract some others. Because when I run into other business owners from other countries, first thing they ask me, they're like, why Bratislava? Right. And I roll out what we just talked about. And they're like, oh, I didn't know.
So that should be the part of the strategy, is the things you don't know.
Exactly.
Okay, now just to wrap up, and Chris, this has been absolutely fascinating, our discussion. What is the phrase that you use most in Slovak? Come on.
Daj mi pivo.
Daj mi pivo. Okay, so we can't go anywhere. I call that pivology.
Yeah, exactly.
The science of beer. And Chris, obviously, you enjoy a beer from time to time.
One or two.
And then to close up, what was your funniest story in Slovakia? Everybody's got a Slovakia anecdote.
I think one of my funniest ones involved the foreign police, which is a shocker.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember going there 2 days in a row because I didn't have something that needed some special stamp or something. And I remember seeing the same German guy that was there at the foreign police 2 days straight trying to ask a question in English and in German to people. And finally, one foreign police guy yelled at him. He goes, "You are in Slovakia. Speak Slovak."
Fabulous.
That was very entertaining. I told the German guy, call this lawyer, they'll help you.
Yeah. And we've all had our problems with the foreign police.
Exactly.
That's an idea for a systemization. Chris Sanders, thank you so much. Oh, yeah, I forgot to ask, how many years has your sentence been in Slovakia?
So far, I've been here since 2018, so over 6 years.
So 6 years deep.
Yeah.
Chris Sanders, Director, Palatine Group, thank you very much for joining us on
Thank
Slovakia
you very
Untold.
much.
Thank
Putting
you.
this together.
I'm now delighted to be joined by
Jamie Reguales.
And how long have you lived in Slovakia?
I think we just realized this year, 20 years now?
20 years. I think you're the foreigner that I've known the longest amount of time spent in Slovakia. 20 years. Wow. And where do you currently work?
Right now, I'm the director at the English International School in Bratislava.
Okay. So first things first, Jamie, we know each other well. We're both sports fanatics. What brought you to Slovakia?
Train.
So you came by train, but why on earth did you come to Slovakia?
No, actually, I was living in Vienna, and I met some friends from college from the U.S. that were doing some projects here in Bratislava over the summer, so they asked me to come and help. We're actually, this group built the baseball field out in Devon. Devinska,
yeah.
in Devinska, Nova Vez. And while I was here over the summer, I met a lot of people and some people from the university, and they asked me if I would stay and teach at the university. I said, okay. And then Vienna called back, and they wanted to extend my next contract. And then Bratislava called back and said, can you work at the university? And
you made that choice.
After about 4 or 5 years, I came here to visit some friends again. I got sick. While I was spending 2 weeks on my back, I'm thinking, you know what? This place is calm. There's a lot of things I can do here. It's calm.
It's calm.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We've had a lot of people talk about the reasons why they moved here. And in fact, Jamie, probably the only person that I will have on our podcast that hasn't come here, they call it migrant love, as an expat who has married a Slovak lady. But when you go back to the US and you've got a very interesting family who also travel the world, when you told your mom and your folks and your family that, Austria, everybody knows, but Slovakia is very hard to put on the map for most. I mean, we had an American earlier say that 9 out of 10 Americans wouldn't be able to put Slovakia on the map. And that's probably still very true today. How did you rationalize that with your family? I mean, obviously they're very pro you traveling and living your life, and you're very open and independent, and that I know from our personal interactions. But what do they think? Why is this guy living in Slovakia?
Well, that's a good question. At that time, I lived overseas for a number of years.
Yeah.
I was in Austria for a while, Italy for a while. I was in Bosnia for a while. And then when it came to Slovakia, for them, it was just like, that's just Jamie.
Yeah, that's just Jamie.
That's just Jamie.
And when you tell them tales, and they've come to visit you, have they come to visit you?
They have.
And what were their first impressions?
Let's see. My parents came out, and that was in early 2000s.
Yeah.
And my father was surprised that they had running water.
Right. So the bar was pretty low in expectation.
Was pretty low.
Yeah. So we got running water here. So that was a big tick for your family. But they must have been quite impressed with what they saw, given, I mean, we know the landscape is beautiful. We know the hiking is amazing. And you're from an outdoorsy family. You spent your whole life in the yard for the best part of your life. And you're a sportsman, an American football player. So coming here, and if you like the outdoors, it really is breathtaking. People don't know that.
No, it's great. I mean, if you're an outdoors person, if you're a mountain person, you're in the valley between two large, you got the Carpathians, you got the high and low Tatras on one side, the other side you have the Alps.
And so now you're here 20 years. Wow. So you've seen all the changes on the political landscape. You've seen and you do well to avoid quite a lot of that. I know we speak privately about that, but a lot has changed in 20 years. What are the most marked observations that you think since the 20 years that you've been here that you think, well, that's pretty cool? Because let's be honest, you go to America, infrastructure's set. Yes, maybe the political landscape is also a little bit volatile right now, as is everywhere in the world.
Everywhere.
No one's got it right as far as I'm concerned. But what you've noticed over that 20-year period, and you've had, bird's eye view on the evolution of a very young country. It's only 30 years old. So you've been here for 2/3 of that evolution.
Yeah, my first time here was in 98, actually.
So, I mean, what do you think that now you think, forget the running water anecdote, but honestly, as a country, it's in its infancy. And people forget that when they expect large things. What were the things that have struck you in the last 20 years that you think, wow?
Well, it's an interesting question because you're here, so it just kind of trickles a little bit. Back then in 98, in those early 2000s, Czechoslovakia jumped on the scene and they just sold themselves to capitalism right away, and they just kind of took off. Yeah. And then they just kind of became the tourism place. Yeah. Right? Slovakia didn't do that. Yeah. So it's just kind of a little by little things would trickle in, little by little things would trickle in. So it really didn't hit you. And when I think about it, the attitudes of people, one of the things that I found here coming in from Austria, the people were very friendly. They were open. They didn't understand you. There weren't a lot of foreigners here at that time, and even being American, people would line up to wait and talk to you at that time. Now people are much more open. It's much more cosmopolitan. It's probably the biggest thing.
So the cosmopolitan thing, I think, because we've had already a couple of people in the podcast have mentioned that there's a quite closed-mindedness sometimes, and people are a little bit hesitant. I don't know if it's a genuine predilection for people to not welcome people, or it's just people who are just unaware or unaccustomed to having.
Most of it is they don't know what to do with it. Yeah. A little bit in Austria, it was, if you make me uncomfortable, I'm not accepting of that. Yeah. In Slovakia, it was more like, I don't understand. Yeah. And now, we're in a metropolitan city. Yeah. So it's a little bit different in the country, but overall, people are, you can find English everywhere. Yeah.
As an educator, you're the director of the English International School, Bratislava, and your role is to shape young minds and create programs that are aligned with modern teaching practices and perhaps even beyond. How do you feel the education system is here? I mean, do you think it's on par with European standards, or is there real room for improvement? I think in the maths index, it was one of the worst in Europe recently. There was some study came out saying that maths was one of the worst countries in Europe. Slovakia and maybe maths isn't important in the global scheme of things when you're an adult, but in terms of educational metrics, there was something to it, and it created a huge kerfuffle in the media. And it shocked the Ministry of Education to its core, and we need drastic reforms that should probably never happen. But as an educator, you must have an opinion on how you feel that Slovak education system could do with some shaping and some coaxing, perhaps.
No, I think education is institutionalized, and anytime anything is institutionalized, it takes
prison.
It takes a very long time to change. If you talk to individual teachers, even the young Slovak teachers, they'll all tell you about all these great ideas that they have, but they can't do it. It's the same thing in the U.S. U.S. will tell you about all these great ideas of innovations in education besides the technology, but they can't do it because it's institutionalized. It's very similar. The school that we have is separate from most of that. And so we do incorporate a lot of modern approaches, not technology, but approaches to learning what everyone's trying to do. So it's open. I liked Slovakia at the beginning because my heart is in development. Mm-hmm. And I saw in Slovakia in the early 2000s and the late 90s a very strong infrastructure to make change happen. This infrastructure was there. There was a desire that change needed to happen, but it was difficult to define what it was at that time. But there was a willingness for that to happen. And so one of the reasons why I decided to stay was I wanted to be a part of that. Yeah. A part of that change.
It's nice to be involved in something that matters, right?
Yes.
And talking of being involved in something that matters and change, American football is something very close to your heart. Did you run an American football federation here? You run an American football club here? You were involved in sports development, weren't you?
Yes, I helped build a club. We did a team up in Turneva. The club existed.
And what was it called?
It was called the Turneva Bulldogs.
Nice.
When we met them, there was about 20 guys that playing out in a mowed cornfield. And they really loved the sport. They were passionate about the sport, and they wanted some help. So we came in, and right away they thought, oh, this is different. This is good. Within about 6 months, we left the cornfield, and they found a local field and found support, and then went from 20 to 80, or just like that overnight.
And it was something that still today there are American football programs that work in Slovakia. I don't know if the sport has grown where it could have grown. I think we have our own opinions on that. But as I've spoken to someone else on the podcast recently, there's nothing more community building than sport. Nothing unifies more than sport. Did you find that it was something that the Slovaks came accustomed to quickly? Was it a sport that they could... I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of learning that goes involved in American football. It's a complicated game. You have to learn plays. There's books that come with it. There are, it's a 60-minute game that can take a day. So how is it something that translated into the Slovak psyche?
What I liked about this was, Slovakia I found is very communal.
Yeah.
Right? You've got the sport, or you've got a party, you've got business that draws us together. But if the relationship isn't there inside of it, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So much. And that's good and bad.
Yeah.
So I do development, and I'm an American, so my development programs are boom, 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 boom. Let's go quickly. But in communities that are relationship centered, that quickness doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so when you push it, then those relationships will actually work against you.
Yeah.
Because they're not ready for that. They want to enjoy the time. So if you can get those both correct, you create a community around something that is progressive, it works. Right now, the best place that's happening is in Nitra. So the Nitra Knights have created that community and a successful program. And right now, it's one of the most successful semi-professional games in the country.
And that's amazing to see because, with American football comes the families, comes the tailgating, comes the food, comes the weekends. It's being part of a family, really, isn't it? And that's something, I guess, which was probably new to Slovak sport. This is something that it comes also with rugby in the UK, and we'll have people speaking about rugby on the podcast a little bit later as well. So sport is an integral part of your mindset, and I know that you're involved in creating sport and educational programs here as well, where you fuse the two. How's that coming along?
Development everywhere is, like I said, Slovakia is a great place to build and develop and grow. You need to know that anytime you're working in some change, there's a reason why something is the way it is.
Yeah.
Right? So if you jump in and say, hey, this is great, everyone likes it, wonderful, but there's always going to be someone who doesn't want that change to happen.
Sure. But I'm not sure that's unique to Slovakia. I think that's...
No, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. And if you don't make those relationships ahead of time, understand where you're going to make the big changes that you and I be interested in doing, isn't going to happen.
Sure. And in terms of now moving completely to the other direction, cultural-wise, where in Slovakia have you traveled with your family or on your own that you thought, wow, this really is an extraordinary place and that you like to frequent? I mean, we've talked about Nitra, yes, and Trnava is very close and they're both beautiful. But where would people be surprised that you've traveled to and you think, well, this really is nice?
Well, because my family's into sports,
yeah.
And my daughter, both of our daughters do gymnastics, so we get a chance to travel around the country.
Yeah.
So doing, taking a morning and taking a quick trip out to Bardeo.
Bardeo, yeah.
On the other side. And then when you're smart about it, we'll take a, 6-hour drive.
Yeah.
So we might make it 8 hours and go off the trail and go visit a few places along the way.
And there's always something to see. And there's always a castle, right?
There's always a castle. I don't know if people know that, from what I've understood, is that Bratislava, the region, is the most concentrated area of castles within a 100-mile radius.
Yeah, it's in
the world.
It's the king of castles. You can't... You can't go to the bathroom in Slovakia without bumping into a castle, I always say.
No, my youngest loves visiting churches. She wants to visit a church. Let's see this church. There's always something to see.
That's interesting because someone also mentioned religious tourism as an opportunity to attract US tourists to Slovakia, which would probably make sense. So we're stir-frying ideas in the office walk here, and we're building ideas for tourism, which is cool. What are some of the biggest struggles you've had? The language, you speak a little bit. What are the phrase that you like using the most in Slovak?
Ooh. That's a good one. Now that I work in an international school, I don't use it so much.
Well, but I've seen you. We go get coffees. You speak to the people around in Slovak. You know more Slovak than I do, for sure.
Prosím, pozor, pivo. The important ones.
The prosím, pozor, and pivo, which obviously means be careful, and please, and beer. Of course, pivology, my favorite science, as I mentioned before. The beer in Slovakia is also something that I think is undermarketed, by the way. Very good beer indeed, and everybody talks about Czech beer, but Slovak beer should be mentioned in the same breath, if not more. And maybe last but not least, what do you think your funniest Slovak story or anecdote has been?
Oh, funniest?
Everybody's got an anecdote. I mean, not necessarily inherently to Slovakia, but we've all got a story about how when we lived here or when we've moved here. You know, I mentioned before, I had to take my wife everywhere just to get things done. And that's always a pain because, you know, and then you hear the story that I'm not your secretary, I'm your wife. And I get that quite a lot. So, you know, I manage now a little bit myself, but you know, everybody's story, foreign police, driving licenses, TVs.
Oh, there's always things. I'd say in the early 2000s when I was here and getting my residency, I had a couple of friends come visit me from my football days. Some of my old players, big guys, one American, one British. And they came over on a weekend to hang out. This is when I was single. And so we were out hanging out on Sunday night.
Not a bad place to be when you're single, is it?
Not a bad place to be when you're single. On Sunday night, we were out, and I told them I got to go to work in the morning, so I'll let you guys know. Go. When you come in, just buzz me. When you come in, just be careful.
Yeah.
Right? Just don't do anything dumb. Don't get in trouble.
Pozor.
Right? So apparently they came in, and it was 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
I was fast asleep. I lived on the first floor, and friends came in and buzzed to try to get me in. I was asleep. I didn't hear it. So they walked around, and they started throwing rocks at my bedroom window to see if I would wake up. I didn't wake up. So they walked back to the front. And again, these are two big guys wearing leather coats at 3 o'clock in the morning. And as they're going to the buzzer, all of a sudden, a cop car jumps the curb and comes right in and flashes them.
Oh, my God.
After that, 2 SWAT cars come up following them, and guys jumping out of the cars with their guns pointed as my friends.
Oh, my God.
What's going on? So one of the police came up and he said, "What are you doing?" And then he explained, "I'm visiting. My friend's right here. He's asleep, but he's right here. He's sleeping. I'm trying to go in." The guy said, "Okay." So he buzzed. No answer. He walks around, throws rocks at my window. No answer.
After all the police stuff.
Yes. And then he said, "Your friend's not here." He goes, No. He's right here. He's just asleep. No. Your friend's not here. He's at the police station. You go, No. He's right here. So a car came up. They threw one in the back. Car came another one, threw the other one. They took him to jail.
Oh, my God. That's the best story I've heard.
It's not done.
Oh, my word.
7 o'clock in the morning, I hear knocks at my door. I start to wake up, and I'm like, oh, my goodness, the guys were out all night. It's really late. So I open the door.
It's the police.
And the guy goes, "Polizei." I'm like, "What?" I opened the door, and he said, "Get your coat." "Why?" "Your friends. Get your coat."
Oh, my God.
I'm like, oh, no, they got in a bar fight. They did something bad. So they threw me in the car. They take me to police. And there is one of my friends behind bars.
Oh, my word.
"Do you know him?" Said, "Maybe." "What do you mean, maybe?" Let's see.
How much damage is it going to cause me?
Because again, I'm doing my residency.
Oh, my God.
So they take me in another room, and my other friend is handcuffed to the wall like an animal.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, all right.
I did ask for a funny anecdote. This is pretty hardcore.
Sorry, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's
so I said, "What did they do?" "They were drunk."
Oh, well, that's not a crime.
Why do you have
It's
them?
not a crime in America. It's a national pastime.
Did they break something? Did they get in a fight? No, they were drunk.
Yeah.
So why are they here?
Yeah.
And so for the rest of the day, we were stuck there in the police. They took our phones. They took everything. We couldn't talk to anyone. They said they had to wait for a translator to translate to write the report.
Wow.
just because they were drunk. So this is my welcome into Slovakia. Sorry, it's not so funny.
No, it is. I mean, it's a great story. And then in 60 seconds, this is the last question I'll ask you. You've got a very analytical mind, and you like to look into the future. I know that about you. If you had to create a strategy in your mind that would help enhance Slovakia's visibility on a global scale, where do you think that trajectory should go?
Oh, this is great because I work in development.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why I decided to build something in Slovakia was that, like I said, there's a great infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so there's a great way to build and grow to, where is Slovakia's brand?
Yeah.
Where can Slovakia make a difference? In the area of development would be ideal.
Yeah.
If it built itself, brought in organizations, NGOs, these things, the infrastructure is there to be a center of development because geographic is in a perfect place.
Mm-hmm.
It's got universities everywhere that are undeveloped, areas that are undeveloped. There's places where you can build development centers and NGOs, and the center point for Europe for development here in Slovakia. That's the best place it could do. Best place it could be.
And that's a really good way to finish. Jamie Regualos, Director at English International School, Bratislava. Thank you so much for your time. As part of Slovakia Travel's ongoing commitment to English-speaking content, Slovakia Untold, the podcast, is brought to you by Zulf Hayat Khan.